So Nintendo on Thursday just released their latest update to the Switch Online expansion service for the Nintendo 64, including the new game Majora's Mask, and with this update came notable bug fixes. The 2.0.0 update is a quite significant upgrade from the previous 1.2 release that came out in January that featured the game Banjo-Kazooie. And if you did watch my last update on the Nintendo Switch Online expansion service for the Nintendo 64, we did talk about how Nintendo was improving the service, and it was a really good thing to see. Today's video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. With internet privacy being such a huge deal these days, it's more important now than ever to protect yourself. With Surfshark VPN, you can easily hide your IP address and encrypt all data that you send and receive. You can easily switch regions to other countries in the world. This means not only your true IP address and identity is masked, it also means you can get around any annoying geolocation locked video content. You know, the ones that say, this video isn't supported in your country? This can get annoying for me when I want to watch local Aussie news. With Surfshark VPN, I can switch my country to Australia and this problem simply goes away. When I'm researching my videos, because of the nature of my channel, sometimes I need to access older unsecured websites of modding and the underground, and I feel safer knowing that my true IP address is not exposed to these sites. Surfshark VPN also allows you to connect to unlimited devices simultaneously on a single account, and this includes Windows devices, Linux, Android, iOS, Amazon Fire TV, and much more. Surfshark VPN has an awesome offer on right now. If you sign up at surfshark.deal/MVG, you will save 83% off and receive 3 extra months for free. And if you think it sucks, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee, which will give you plenty of time to try out Surfshark VPN risk-free. Now, if you did watch my last video, and I'll leave a link to that in the description below, I did talk about how Nintendo was improving the service with some minor fixes, but enough to really be significant for people like myself to take notice and say, look, Nintendo's actually addressing these issues. But if you recall, the first version of the NSO expansion for the Nintendo 64 was especially bug-ridden with all sorts of issues that were going on, especially around a game like The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. The issues surrounding fog and input lag were significant, but I'm happy to report that things have improved significantly, and we are going to take a look at some of the fixes that were done in this latest release, as well as talk about the future. So Nintendo has provided updates and bug fixes to this latest update, and for the first time I can probably recommend the NSO expansion service if you are interested in playing Nintendo 64 games. I can recommend it over the Wii Virtual Console versions as the one to get. And simply because Nintendo has listened to the customers' feedback and concerns that we've been talking about over the last few months and addressed these with some notable updates. And for the first time, I can genuinely start to get excited about the prospect of what new games may be added to this service in the coming months. But we are getting a little ahead of ourselves. Let's quickly recap some of the trouble areas for the N64 NSO that we had concerns about previously. Now, the first and probably the most significant issue had to do with the fog rendering. In The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, there were issues surrounding fog, and it wasn't that fog was not implemented in the game at all, it was just that it was implemented incorrectly. If you take a close look, you can see fog at distance is completely missing, but fog kind of up close still exists, and it's almost like it's the reverse effect of what should be happening. But I am happy to report in the latest 2.0.0 update, the fog rendering has been completely fixed, with fog in the distance being applied correctly, and this really now does change the look of the game to what it's supposed to look like. Remember, it looked completely broken and not very good in the earlier versions of the game up to the 1.2 release on the Nintendo 64 service for the NSO, and it wasn't really known why the fog was not fixed correctly in previous versions, but I am happy to report that the fog is completely and faithfully restored, and it looks one-to-one correct of that of the original game. And if we compare this now to the Wii Virtual Console version, it looks pretty much identical, and that's exactly what we're looking for here. And coupled with the fact that the Switch does have a higher resolution, then this is the version now for me to say, yes, I think that the NSO version of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time is the one to get. So this is fantastic news that this issue has finally been addressed. I'm not really sure why it took so long, why we got to this point, and many of you will probably argue that this should have been fixed and ready to go when the service first rolled out, and I would agree with you, but we are well past that point now, so the best thing now really is to look forward. And Nintendo is listening to customer feedback with each update, and they are providing these incremental fixes. Now, the next issue that I want to talk about is the infamous Water Temple Dark Link Room. In the last 1.2 update, Nintendo did fix the room, but they didn't fix it properly. And as you may recall, this is what it looked like on the previous 1.2 version. While it was better than the original version, which was completely broken, it was still not right. But once again, I'm happy to report in the 2.0.0 update, the room is completely fixed and it looks correct. Now, it's likely that the fog fix from previously is being applied here, and it's basically fixed the room without really any other updates needed. I'm not really sure if that's entirely the case, but it seems like it's just had a flow-on effect to this particular room as well. But the great news is, if you compare it to the 1.2 version, where there is no fog being applied, especially in the horizon, you can see that the horizon is completely visible. You can now see the fog being applied correctly. And on top of that, the water ripple effect is also correctly being rendered as well. So this is fantastic news. The other room that I took a look at with regards to fog rendering is the House of Sculpture. This is another room that possessed incorrect lighting in the room itself, and a lot of people were quick to tell me that it's probably because of the fog rendering once again. Well, I'm happy to report that the House of Sculpture room is also completely fixed. So this one issue to do with fog rendering really has addressed many of the concerns of the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time overall, and this is fantastic to see. Now, there are some other areas that I wanted to talk about, notably the input lag. There was some work done on the 1.2 update that did reduce input lag by about 1 to 2 frames. And there has been some additional work that has been done on this latest 2.0.0 update that reduces lag further. But if I'm to be completely honest, it's only a slight reduction in input delay, but it is good to see Nintendo is still working on input lag and trying to reduce it as low as possible. But we do have to be mindful that it is emulation. And with emulation means there's always going to be some level of input delay. Now, one other game outside of The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time that has its fog rendering completely fixed is Mario Kart 64. In Choco Mountain, there is heavy use of fog kind of in that particular course when you race through it. And in previous versions of the N64 Online Expansion Pack, there was fog rendering, but it was still not accurate. Once again, in the 2.0.0 update, that has been completely fixed. And it's not only just fog rendering, we've also seen some bug fixes as well. With Paper Mario, there was a particular part of the game where that would crash the system, and it would result in some instances in corrupt save files. As you recall, this was something that was talked about in previous versions of the NSO expansion service, and it did have some concern around it, especially considering that you may lose your entire save file and could get corrupted. But I'm happy to report that that particular crash has also been fixed as well. And this is a great thing to see. Now, it's not all good news though. There are still some outstanding issues with this emulation, but as of the nature of emulation, there's always going to be some quirky things. Dr. Mario still has incorrect transition effects in place. There's also some issues with Yoshi's Story surrounding one of the bosses that has its invisibility effect only partially resolved. So there's definitely still some more updates to be done here, but overall I'm very satisfied with this latest 2.0.0 update. Nintendo is clearly listening to the feedback, and they understand and they know about these issues and they are addressing them. So that is a great thing to see. And now we can really only speculate about what's coming next for the service. We know that Majora's Mask just released for this month, but next month we'll get hopefully some new announcements of what's coming next and beyond. And I'm hopeful that we'll start to see games like Wave Race, maybe 1080 snowboarding. And I know that maybe I'm fanboying a little bit, but hopefully we'll see GoldenEye come to this service. I think that would be really cool. And finally, I can recommend and really start to get excited about the games that are coming to this particular service. As someone that loves the Nintendo 64 and grew up playing the Nintendo 64, I'm very excited about this particular service. So yes, I can finally recommend the NSO expansion service for anyone that's interested in picking it up. Nintendo has chipped away and provided bug fixes for the N64 emulation. And for the first time, I'm very happy in the state that it's currently in. Not to mention you get a list of really excellent Genesis games. And of course, we can't forget the DLC that's being added to this service later on with Mario Kart 8 as well. So this is something that finally, I think Nintendo probably wanted to release, on day one, but for whatever reason, it never came out. But I am very happy to see that this service is continuing to get the love, care, and attention that it deserves. And we will continue to follow the NSO expansion service in the coming months, especially when there are significant updates to the emulation, as we've seen with this latest 2.0.0 revision. Let me know your thoughts about the NSO expansion service for the Nintendo 64 in the comments below. Have you been playing it? Are you thinking about picking it up now? I can definitely recommend it if you want to take a look at it. I think you'll be very pleased with the experience that it provides overall. It really is starting to feel like a quality product and something that Nintendo really should have given us on day one. But for whatever reason, probably due to time being an issue and really just trying to get the service out the door as quickly as they could, they just went into it, maybe like 90% complete and decided that they would address some of the issues later on. But we are going to leave it here for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Bye for now.